At a card show, your behavior around other vendors matters just as much as the cards you have in your case. Listen, this isn't like baseball or golf. There's not a bunch of like unwritten etiquette rules or things like that. It's really just basic professionalism that's going to get you a long way. Unfortunately, I've been to enough shows now that some people just skip the basics, and it affects how people deal with you, talk about you, or if people even want to vend next to you again. Let's talk about vendor etiquette, the real kind. I'm not talking dramatic stuff here, but this is the stuff that's important that will help you build relationships that will last beyond the show that you're at. What's up? I'm Taylor with Mount Silver Trading Company. I began vending at the beginning of 2025, and one thing became really clear really fast. Your reputation is everything when it comes to card vending. And that means it follows you with other vendors, both good and bad. The reality here is having good etiquette and being a courteous vendor is not super complicated. It's really just the basics and doing that very consistently over time. So today, we're gonna build that foundation for you. Here's a reality check that a lot of new vendors need. The other vendors around you aren't your enemy. Heck, they're not even really your competition most of the time. Sure, you guys may have a couple of similar cards here or there, or have cards priced slightly differently to drive a little bit of friendly competition, but at the end of the day, everyone can succeed at a card show. The reason having good vendor-to-vendor relations is important is because your neighbors are the one who are going to watch your table when you need a break, send buyers your way if they don't have a card that someone is looking for but they know you do, make deals that can benefit both parties, and most importantly, making really long show days fun and interesting. I vend next to the same group of 3 guys at any chance I can because we all make each other better. All right, we're gonna start off with 6 simple rules today. These aren't anything too crazy, it's just common courtesies to show the people around you to make sure that you can have a really smooth day and you're not making anyone too angry. Rule number 1 is to not interrupt a deal in progress. It doesn't matter if you're trying to help or you have something really important to say to the other vendor. Unless it's a true emergency, let them finish their deal before you jump in. Rule number 2 is keeping your setup contained. This one drives me crazy, and I get after the people that help me at my table for breaking this one as well. Making sure that your stuff stays within the bounds of your table and you're not encroaching on other people's backspace or on their table themselves. Things like backpacks, binders, supplies, all need to stay contained within your tables. Rule number 3 is giving people space during a negotiation. If they're looking for a second opinion or want your advice on a card or something, they'll happily pull you in, but until they do that, make sure that you're not just hovering over their shoulder, looking how they're comping things, making comments, things like that. It can be really distracting, especially when they're in the middle of a big negotiation. Rule number 4, don't poach people who are clearly standing at someone else's table. This one should go without saying, but if someone is waiting in front of another table, waiting for a vendor to finish up a deal, it's really rude to try and distract them, pull them over to your table, or, heaven forbid you're out wandering around and you're talking to them and you pull them away. The unfortunate reality is once someone steps away from a table, there's no promise that they'll ever come back. So taking away that opportunity from a fellow vendor can really rub people the wrong way. Number 5 is not treating other vendors like they owe you a discount. I understand we're all kind of doing the same thing, but the buying environment, especially for Pokemon right now, margins are fairly tight. It's not uncommon for most people to expect 80 to 85% on some of the stuff that they're selling. And so if you're coming up to a vendor expecting that same amount, you're basically just asking them to lose money so that you can go and sell the card instead. I'm not opposed and will often give out friendly discounts to the people around me, the people I know and people I really respect. But a lot of times if I've got to stay firm on my price, I can't wiggle off of it for another vendor that I know is going to turn around and try and sell the same card. And finally, rule number 6 is to treat newer and younger collectors with respect. There's nothing that drives me crazier than watching a vendor just absolutely swindle a brand new collector or a young hobbyist. I feel like as vendors, we have an obligation to be good stewards of the hobby, and doing that can make people feel burned and kind of shy away from this awesome hobby that we all enjoy together. I'm going to give you 2 examples of what breaking these etiquettes can look like and how they can leave people feeling. Fairly early on in my vending career, there was a guy in my local scene that would go around to every single table right before the show was about to open and ask if they had anything that they were wanting to sell at 70% of market. So, as we're all setting up and we've got our pre-show nerves and jitters, he's basically coming around and asking us to wholesale cards to him for the price that most of us paid for these cards or less. Look, we're all trying to do the same thing here, right? We're all at the show setting up, wanting to sell our cards for as high of a price as we possibly can. Walking around and making an ask like that before the doors even open on day 1 puts people in a really awkward position. Especially for newer vendors, you feel weird saying no, especially for someone that's been doing this for what seems like way longer than you, because you don't want to come off as rude. But saying yes basically guarantees that you lose money, either by selling it to him for lower than you bought it for, or losing out on the opportunity to sell that card at full price. And really, the whole encounter feels kind of predatory. Vendor-to-vendor deals can be really great. I try and be mindful and courteous to people to walk around and do those deals as shows are closing, if they're just wanting to liquidate a couple more things, get a couple more bucks in hand. But doing that at the beginning of the show can really put people off. That's not being a hustler, that's not being savvy, that's just being inconsiderate of your fellow vendor's time. We're going to do a quick pause here before I get into example number 2, and I'm going to thank our sponsor of today's video, you guys. Seriously, every like, comment, and subscription helps me out more than you guys will ever know, and allows me to keep this thing rolling week after week for you. If you find this content useful, hit the subscribe button, as that helps YouTube push it out to more and more people so that we can keep this community growing. Thank you.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
All right, let's get back to our second example of bad etiquette. This next one happened just a couple of weeks ago, and it still kind of has me shaking my head. A customer was standing at my table waiting for me to finish up a deal that I had going with someone else. This was someone that was specifically sent to my table by another vendor friend of mine who had something that he knew that I would really like. And he wasn't lollygagging around. He was standing at my table, very clearly attentive to what I was doing in my other deal and waiting patiently for his turn. That's when another vendor had walked up and approached him, hearing about some of the cards that he had, and started talking and maybe even looking at some of the cards at my table. Then proceeded to pull him away from my table and go make a deal halfway across the venue at his table instead. Like I said earlier, once someone leaves your table, there is no guarantee that they'll ever be back, and that really rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like I missed out on an opportunity to build a connection with that patron and to buy some of the stuff that a fellow vendor knew I would like. It worked out in the end, and he did end up coming back, but not after that other vendor had bought some of the cards off of him, and that continues to sit with me wrong. I don't have any problem sharing deals, pointing people in other people's directions, but coming over and pulling someone from my table felt kind of malicious. Not only that, it was kind of disrespectful to the customer too, who was just politely waiting his turn, and then by the time he was done and back around, I was already working with someone else, so he had to wait again. The biggest thing that this signaled to me though was that this vendor only really cares for himself. And that's the thing, poaching isn't just rude. It tells every vendor around you that you aren't someone that they want to work with. And I promise you never want to be that guy. On the flip side, I want to talk about the group that I vend with regularly. We each respect each other to the utmost, and on top of that, we want to see each other succeed just as much as we want to see ourselves succeed. This really helps drive our entire section's morale up and keeps the weekend really enjoyable. During shows, we'll typically watch each other's tables, send customers each other's way, help each other comp out cards if we're working on big deals, keep the morale up during slow patches, and finally, really respect each other's space. The last thing I want to note is I vend pretty regularly with my 8-year-old son. And the vendors that treat him well go way up in my book. There are a couple of guys that I've done probably a dozen deals with because every time my son comes up to their table, he gets treated really well and they're always very, very kind to him. Those are the people that I'll support forever. At the end of the day, this stuff isn't super complicated. It's just basic levels of professionalism, but it is very noticeable. As a quick recap, if you want to be a vendor that people enjoy being around, make sure you stay in your space, not interrupting deals or hovering over people's shoulders, you're not poaching people's deals, you're not demanding discounts, you're fair, you're calm, you're a good steward to the hobby and you treat collectors with respect. Lastly, and most importantly, you act like you're a part of the room, not above it. Alright, we've had a couple episodes in a row where we talk kind of high-level concepts and more mental strategy than anything. Next week, we're back into the hard tactical tips as we take on how we structure trade deals. We're going to talk about how I evaluate trades, why trading can be so beneficial for your table, and how to know when to say yes or when to walk away. If you've been trying to level up your deal making, this episode's going to help out a ton. See you next week.